How I Met My Husband at Christmas Time. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. Well, I've told this story many, many times before. So if you go back to How I Met My Husband, put my name in there, you're probably going to come back upon several videos. But I have so many new people on my channel, I thought I would just share it again. You know, I met my husband almost exactly to the day many years ago. We have been together around 30 years, and I met him at Christmas time. Now, for those of you that know the story, you might want to hear it again, okay? Well, I met my husband through my work, and yet that morning that I woke up, I had this overwhelming feeling of the presence of my husband, who I had not yet met or knew about or knew of or knew who he was. I had the spiritual feeling of this man standing next to me, his spirit, his soul. And I couldn't shake, well, nor did I want to shake it. I loved that feeling. It was a wonderful feeling. And I had that feeling all throughout the day. That morning I was driving to the gym and I looked over and I saw a man with a woman with a baby carriage. I remember it so vividly. And I said, no, it's not that man. And then I went to the gym and I just felt this overwhelming, powerful feeling of this man, my husband to be, in my life. And it wasn't anybody at the gym. And then I went to, I think it was called Del Taco. This is in California. And there were three very handsome young men, my age group, standing near me ordering tacos. And I knew it wasn't them. I knew it wasn't them. And so I thought, okay, I must, I must be crazy. Well, I knew I wasn't crazy, but I thought, this just doesn't, why am I feeling this way? I must be wrong. And I knew I had to go to work that evening. And so that evening, I went to work. And I knew I didn't meet anybody. It was a Saturday evening, and I knew I wasn't going to meet anybody on a Saturday evening. And I had a date afterwards anyhow. And I want to show you a little cup that my husband gave me on the day that we actually had kind of our first date at the gym after we had met. See that little cup down there? It was Christmas cup. It is a Christmas cup, and it had flowers in it at the time. And he gave me a card. And, well, before I tell you what was in the card, so I went to work, and I had a date after work, so I was getting ready to leave work. And in walks this man, this most gorgeous man. Absolutely, to me, the most gorgeous man I'd ever met. And in he walks with another man. And we just briefly talked, just briefly, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. Somehow he ended up with I gave him my number, my telephone number, and my address. And he wasn't from there. His plane had broken down. His plane had broken down that he was on. He was on a plane, and it had broken down, and he ended up being there for 3 days. So I went on my date that night. He'd asked me to go dancing, and I said, no, I can't. I have a date. I think I told him I had a date. I was dating a guy, but it was kind of just a very casual dating. But I knew there was just some kind of magic there. I knew that he was my husband, even though we just talked for a moment. And so the next morning he called me, woke me up out of bed at 7 a.m. And he said, I don't know why I'm going to tell you this, but you're going to be my wife. And I said back to him, yes, I know, but call me back in 3 hours when I'm awake. And that is how I met my husband. So we talked, and 3 hours later, we talked for like 3 or 4 hours on the phone, but we didn't get together that day because I had a date with the guy that I had the night before. But I knew at that point that the guy that I was dating, even though it was not a formal relationship or anything, I knew that was going to be over because this man that I met the night before was going to be the love of my life. And so, or was the love of my life now. Even though all we had was a phone conversation and in-person meeting for a couple minutes. And this is back before social media, way back before any of that. And so then my husband, or at the time he wasn't my husband, we got together the following day when he gave me the little cup and the card. And in the card it said, you're going to be my wife, I know that. And I have that card to this very day. And we both knew, we both automatically knew that we were going to, that we were meant for each other. Well, he had to fly off. We spent about 3 days just as, friends, for about 3 days, dating, but like friendship, like dating. And it was wonderful. And then I think we went to a movie and went to dinner and things like that. Well, he flew away, and he actually flew over went over and he stopped in Shannon, Ireland. And on Christmas morning, I was at my mom's in Palm Springs, and he called and woke me up at 5 a.m. This time I didn't tell him to call me back later. I listened to every word he had to say. And he said, someday you and I are going to come here to Shannon, Ireland. I want to bring you here. And so many years later, well, not many years, about 5 years later, we did end up going there. We flew to Ireland, traveled all over, and we went to Shannon, Ireland. Okay, so he was really great to his word. Anyhow, he was gone on business for about 3 weeks. And then he back then we wrote letters. That was what we did. We wrote letters. And even though he was traveling on business, his mail was able to get to him. And so he said, I'm coming back to California. He wasn't from California. And he said, we're going to spend 2 weeks as a vacation together. And I was so scared. I thought, oh my gosh, I hardly know this man. And being 2 weeks together, either it's going to work wonderfully or it's going to fall apart. That much time, especially if you're driving around together in a car and spending all that time exclusively with each other. Well, he came back, he rented a really beautiful car, and we just went everywhere. We just went, up and down California and over to Nevada, to Las Vegas, San Francisco, San Diego. We just traveled around for 2 weeks, and it was absolutely wonderful. We even went to Death Valley. We just seemed to go everywhere. We went to Hollywood. And we just had this wonderful, amazing, magical time. And then it was time for him to go back home. And I was so in love at that point. And I knew he was so in love too. And he said, why don't you just come move where I'm at? Because he wasn't able to move where I lived due to his work. But I was more able to move to where he was at. And so about 2.5 weeks after he had stepped on the plane, went back to his home, I stepped on a plane going to a town, which is about an hour away from where we live now, that I'd never been to before. I had no job, no familiarity, and all I knew was that I was going to marry this man that I loved. And so be it. I got there, and it wasn't all that long after, a few months later, that we got married. And so we have been together around 30 years, and it's been a wonderful, amazing journey. From my house to yours, Merry Christmas. May God bless you, and may love come your way. Hope to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.